we're going to try to take a look at a little bit deeper the physical health thing. I've done a series previous on physical health, and that was a little bit more complicated, a lot of moving parts. I've since tried to kind of boil it down and refine it to something a little bit more uh, easy to kind of chew on, if you will. And a good way to put it together, this challenge here, is that when we're doing a math problem, we have what we know, what we don't know, and what we're kind of solving for, which we don't particularly know yet, but we know the idea of. So it's kind of like an unknown known, where we want to get, but we don't know how to get there specifically. And that's why we're solving this problem. Now, self-care has a way of kind of bringing the unknown pieces into the right expression. So now we have what we already knew, and now that what we now know because of self-care, and we're solving for the end outcome. Now these two pieces, the known and previously unknown, create the environment that allows the body, because it's an organic thing, experience life, to work together to produce the outcome, which there's no specific, linear process to. But if you have already your life experience, and then you have the missing pieces to that experience, the kind of solving parts of that, then this allows the kind of, let's say, elements to be all there, and then life has to bring together the what we previously call a challenge to bring synchronicity to these pieces, and then this produces the end result we were looking for. I think this is a better way of seeing how that all works. And for our position on physical health specifically, we'd say physical health, which is often equated to kind of a fitness, exercise, movement thing, is not quite the same. I'll reiterate that in self-care, fitness style things switch because we're applying it to lifestyle, and then they turn into what we'd call actions. So we'd say that physical health specifically is the ability to use internal resources to rise to the occasion of a challenge. Okay? So what does that look like? This means, let's do a scenario where it doesn't work out. So let's say we don't have physical health in this aspect, and a person has to get a deadline finished for work, but there's so many things that have to be so many things that have to happen at home that have to get done before I get a clear mind to really take on this challenge. So I'm feeling stressed out with the whole thing, and I'm kind of pushing my way through it, and finally I make the deadline, but there's a lot of mistakes, or the amount of energy it took to do that, now I'm burnt out. I can't really function at home anymore, and I can't function the same way at work. I have to recover for a long period of time. Or I'm really angry at everybody else, or I'm frustrated with all other things, but I make it through the deadline okay, and the presentation goes okay, and I don't really take time to recover. But everybody else has kind of felt the pressure of my own pressure. We'd say in either of these cases, we have not had the internal resources to meet the challenge. However, we did kind of fumble our way through and make the best we can out of the scenario and reach somewhat of what the end outcome is like. Because the end outcome is really symbolic, I got the project done. We're not talking about the quality of it. We're not talking about the cost of it to ourselves or to the company. We're not talking about the long-term challenges of maintaining this way of doing things. None of these are really in that first initial, and we call it attempt at solving that problem. But when we take a look at physical health, we are taking all those things into account because we want this thing to be a permanent change. For it to be permanent, it has to really be of the person. It can't be motivated by anything else. It really has to be achieved kind of internally so that I can call upon it as a resource whenever an external challenge comes about, right? So it doesn't matter where I am, external challenge happens, I can rise to that occasion because I have the internal resources for that. So we'd say that physical health is more the bringing out of internal resources to meet the challenge at minimal or no cost to myself. In fact, there would be growth in replace of stress or frustration. I've now been able to see the accumulation of my skills in one specific challenge. Therefore, I know I can do it, and I rise to larger challenges or more important things to me, right? So this would be physical health as a more tangible thing, where we'd say our fitness version of this, our non-lifestyle version of this, is just being able to lift, run, jog, have a certain heart rate, have a certain blood pressure, have a certain ease of movement, have a certain vigor about us. These are smaller expressions of, let's say, internal resources, but not really for the act of living. So I guess I'll make another delineation right here between living and surviving. Now we have our base way of doing things. This is of the kind of material way of doing stuff. So we'd say that I'm trying to survive, therefore I use all resources externally to myself to make it all happen. This would be our version of surviving. However, when we take a look at living, this is I'm using all my internal resources to meet these challenges and therefore bring about internal value and continue. This would be more of the physical health. To make another model kind of similar to this, we take a page out of Maslow's peak experiences. We'd say that a person being able to have a peak experience is somebody who is using physical resources, physical health to gain the peak experience. This is going to be set in potential. So this pretty much means that we're not born here. We do have to achieve it. So if you are not putting conscious effort towards this kind of self-care, towards this physical health model, then we'd say you are just surviving on external things. However, we want to reach the potential of the individual in self-care, so we're going to switch over to living. And to do that, as you could hear in the kind of wording, there is a forward-moving energy in it. There is a taking control and command of this thing. Shoot, I just realized that I'm still recording. It didn't look like I was. All right. So anyway, back to our point. The idea is that we are really moving from within ourselves externally, as opposed to external things moving in on us. This is always going to be towards growth, extroverting internal resources. In this way, we don't have so many compensations. If there is a problem that we cannot take on, it's easier to realize, what we're going to need to take it on, as opposed to thinking we can take it on, taking on, not succeeding, which shows that we didn't have the skills to do it, and then not knowing where to start. This is very disorienting, and it is quite troublesome to the mental state of the individual. I think this brings about the common understanding of what stress is, and this is kind of we call it a negative external pressure or negative internal pressure, causing us to feel a way about something and not having a direct path out of that. Self-care definition of stress is the indicator to show us an area where we need to grow, where we are lacking internal resources. Therefore, acknowledging this, we find experience or somebody who understands greater, self-care professional, to guide us in this direction. However, each part has to be gained by the individual. I cannot share my wisdom with you. You must run upon wisdom in my words, in my voice, in my expressions, and therefore use it for everything that you will use it for. All this stuff is, I think, painting a more interesting picture of what physical health is and how it is orienting to the process of living and the lifestyle. And therefore, we have to put a little effort into cultivating this experience. It's greater than just the actions themselves. It is a kind of internal meeting with the actions. I'd say, actually, if I say it more correctly, I'd put it in the words of when a challenge arises, it gives you the opportunity to align mentally, physically, and emotionally and take on this challenge. So the challenge itself is unifying. And in this unity, we can tap into our potential, meaning the things that we've already done, and the understanding that we have and push towards greater things, right? This is more the self-care version of challenge, whereas the other version of challenge might be that it is tough and rough, and we try to get through what we can. We survive through it and keep surviving after it. We are kind of trying to do a little bit more with that, with support and understanding and appreciation of the situation itself. And we are trying to not just use negative challenges. We can also learn from the fact of creating something, growing towards it. We can take on a task that proves to be challenging, but still use our resources consciously to overcome it. This is more, I think, the creative way of understanding challenge. And in that way, we learn from our wisdom and our knowledge and what we understand, as opposed to the default, if you will, of the hardship happens, I make it through hardship, and I continue. We can still learn really great things through hardship, which is another challenge, the testing of internal resources. But in this way, we are in less command of the situation. Although we can still rise to the occasion if we have the internal resources to do so. And this is more out of the blue. We're not particularly taking on it. It's just kind of being thrown at us by life. So these are two ways to understand challenges, ways to understand stress, but meaning putting all these things in there to give a little bit more of the feeling of the environment of where physical health really lives, exists. And in that way, hopefully, giving us a kind of platform to add more information to this later on in another video. All right, thank you all for listening. Hopefully that gives a little insight. Hopefully that's a little bit more puzzling as well, so your brains continue to strive towards something greater than just the content of my words. Yes, all right, have a great day.